Dungeon Siege 3 is a wonderful top-down sword and sorcery action RPG where you're given the incredible task of breathing life back into the disgraced 10th Legion and spreading your righteous influence across the kingdom. To this end, you and your merry band of misfits bash enemies, carefully invest in a multitude of skills, and navigate many complex moral choices. I enjoyed it all, and we're going to talk about why. First up is the story and narrative structure. In Dungeon Siege 3, you take up arms as one of 4 characters, or just all 4 at the same time if you do online co-op. These merry heroes all have ties to the broken, disgraced 10th Legion, a powerful order of knights which once ruled the kingdom of Ebb. 30 years ago, they were all but wiped out by a powerful sorceress who has since presumed control of the crown. It's up to you to dethrone her, put back the shattered pieces of the Legion, and see justice is done. Of course, it's all easier said than done. Dungeon Siege 3 is broken up into many chapters and many distinct locales, each with its own citizens, nobility, and a menagerie of unique faces. All these people have some stake in the kingdom's fate and the Legion's resurrection, whether they be opposed to you or otherwise. And this is a game that thoroughly encourages actual role-playing. The dialogue choices and consequences of your behaviors fit naturally into the game's setting and tone. Never once do I recall a dialogue option breaking immersion, and in fact a great deal of effort has gone into giving every individual choice fully voiced performances. The way you see your choices change people's opinions is handled well in both macro and micro scale. The more you help the people of a town with side quests, the more you'll hear them chatter about the Legion's triumphant return. And there are also the larger moral choices, such as sparing or taking the life of your arch-enemies, or championing your ideals over the immediate safety of others. It all culminates in one of the best endings I've seen in any video game, to boot. Much like Marvel Ultimate Alliance, the ending cinematic is a retrospective of the choices you've made and their influence on the world at large. It's impressive to see so many disparate components woven together seamlessly to create a conclusion that feels like the natural result of one's actions. And just like Marvel Ultimate Alliance, some of the consequences are pretty heavy. This is only the second game I've seen attempt something of this scale and presentational value. So yeah, a political drama story mixed with magical fantasy and fueled by actual role-playing. We take those. Next up is the gameplay. Dungeon Siege 3 is equal action and equal RPG. The game has plentiful loot and leveling and builds to base your character around. I went for a high stamina, high attack build, for example, at the cost of weakening my skills. And my roommate Nathan tailored his build around Reinhardt's Geometry of Annihilation skill. The sheer breadth of customization is both impressive and streamlined all at once. There are 3 tiers to every level you gain: the abilities themselves, which act as special moves, the proficiencies, which act as buffs to your abilities, and passive talents, which generally improve your character. Mix and matching all these elements is a large part of the fun. The actual combat system is very thoughtful atop that. Button mashing may be viable if you tailor your build specifically to facilitate it, but on average, you have to actually understand the mechanics, their utilities, and use your abilities at the optimal time for optimal effect. Even outside of your RPG skills, there are so many additional strategic elements at play, such as multiple combat stances which shift the hitboxes and speed of your strikes, or orbs that can be spent to cast empowered versions of your regular moves. There's even a dodge roll, and I was proud to encounter a number of times where I succeeded in a fight, not just because of my character build, but because I was able to read the enemy's movements and successfully maneuver around their assault. It's all very engaging, and the game provides a detailed guidebook for it in case it becomes overwhelming. The highlight of the gameplay is perhaps the bosses, which most thoroughly test your survivability and come with a host of unique mechanics. They're focused on overwhelming you, and you have to think fast to come out on top. Exactly what I like to see in my action games. And if there's still not enough depth for you, the DLC campaign adds ultimate moves and gear enchantments to the mix, allowing for additional strategizing and encouraging the player's attachment to particular weapons and armor. Do I have any real criticisms toward Dungeon Siege 3? Well, I've got nothing fair exactly. One of my favorite features in other action RPGs is the capacity to pick up items you can't use yourself and to trade them with your co-op partner. I really like this sense of camaraderie and the synchronicity of having 2 or more player menus open simultaneously. In Dungeon Siege 3, though, all your loot gets dumped into a single inventory, and you have to take turns accessing it. It's not the worst thing, and it's barely noticeable in the grand scheme of how phenomenal the rest of the game is, but it stood out to me. And on the whole, Dungeon Siege 3 is probably one of my absolute favorite action RPGs. I'm glad I gave it a try, and it's particularly surprising how intelligent and enjoyable it is. Hey, you've made it to the end of the video, and that means I get to talk about my Patreon. If you grab the 2nd or 3rd tiers from it, you can literally force me to make content about a game or film you love. Or you can just offer general support. Speaking of that general support, it's time to list the wonderful patrons I already do have. Here we go. My wonderful supporters are iPompous, Anonymous, Jay, Marth Sinclair, Call Me Haley, Sam Anderson, Some Call Me Anto, Wapoza, and Torches. You'll find a link to the Patreon in the description. Thank you all so much for your time and thoughts, and I'll talk to you in the next video.